I'd been walking home after the late shift with my head down, in that post-work days where all you can really think of is eating some food and vegging out, when I met her. "Oh, there you are, babe." I turned around to see a pretty young woman rushing toward me, arms wide open. I stumbled back as she wrapped herself around me, my hands still stuffed in my jacket pockets. "Please help me. Someone is following me," she whispered, looking up at me with panic in her eyes. I glanced behind her and saw a silhouette approach, then pause just before they entered the glow of the streetlight. "Do you see?" she hissed, releasing her grip on me. "Yeah," I murmured, staring straight at the person to let them know I could see them. I hoped this would be enough to turn them away, but they remained motionless. "Will you walk me to my place? It's not far, I promise," she asked. "Yeah, of course." I didn't like turning my back on her pursuer. As we walked, I strained my ears to listen for approaching footsteps. Every so often I glanced back, unnerved to see them each time, avoiding the light and standing in the shadows, still and silent. "Are they still there?" She tugged on my sleeve. "Yeah, they are. Listen, I don't know if we should walk straight to your place. Then they'll know where you live," I said, stealing another glance behind us. "We should try to lose them somehow." She looked up at me, and I watched her cycle through expressions as she tried to decide if I was trustworthy. "We can go to a place with more people around," I added, hoping I hadn't alarmed her. "Look, there's a diner a few streets over. We can sit down, wait a while. Make sure the coast is clear before we leave. You hungry?" "No, but that's fine with me. It's freezing out here," she replied after a few moments. We crossed the street at the next intersection. I looked back to see the figure still standing on the other side, watching as we disappeared around the corner. I quickened the pace, practically dragging her along. Once we made it inside the relative safety of the diner, I picked us a booth away from the windows, but at an angle that I'd be able to see if anyone walked by. After our waitress dropped off our menus and glasses of water, my new acquaintance appeared to relax a bit, though her hands were still so shaky that she had to use both of them to sip her water. We sat in silence, and I kept my eyes on the window. "I'm really sorry I ruined your night," she blurted after a while. I panicked. No, not at all. Totally fine. I'm glad you said something. That was definitely sketchy," I assured her. She looked down at the table, and we went back to the uncomfortable silence. Not wanting to keep her from getting home, I eventually came up with a suggestion. "Look, I could call you a cab or something. Get you a ride home. That way you know that creep won't be able to follow you." She didn't look up and address the table. Her response took me aback. "I don't know if it would even matter." "What do you mean?" She sighed, bringing her hands to her face and rubbing her eyes. "It will still be out there somewhere." "It?" She spread her fingers open, peering at me from behind them. "Yes, it. Them. I don't know anymore." "Okay, look, how about you fill me in on exactly what is going on here?" I snapped. She dropped her hands. Her lip quivered like she was fighting back tears. I softened my expression and apologized, but she waved it off. They were far away when it started. Far enough that I didn't think much of it. Just someone in the corner of my eye, really. At first I thought it was just me imagining things. It took a while for me to realize that I was being stalked. I narrowed my eyes at her, wondering just what I'd gotten myself involved with. "It just keeps getting closer," she continued. It got so close. I could almost see it clearly, and I knew it wasn't right. The situation was taking a turn I hadn't anticipated. There was no denying that someone appeared to be following her, but the rest of her story made me question her lucidity. I chose my next words carefully. "Why don't you tell me what you think you saw, and I'll try to help you. And if I can't, I'll find someone that can." She pulled back instantly, regarding me suspiciously. "I'm not crazy. I know what I saw," she replied sharply. "All I'm saying is that your eyes can play tricks on you when you're afraid," I countered. No, it wasn't human. It was like it was the absence of a person. Like where someone should have been, there was just no one. I was so scared, and I knew it couldn't be real. But then you saw it too. I did see someone. That part is accurate. But I didn't see anything that made me think that they were. I trailed off as something caught my peripherals. Outside the window, there had been a nearly imperceptible movement, but as I squinted toward it, I could make out the vague outline of a figure in the alley across the street. She followed my gaze, twisting in her seat. "It's there, isn't it?" she breathed. I nodded, gritting my teeth. "Wait here," I said, rising from the booth. "No, don't go out there," she exclaimed, her eyes wide. I ignored her and pushed through the door, adrenaline pumping through me. "Hey, I can see you," I called, entering the road, my knuckles curling. The silhouette stood its ground. I was nearly across the road when the headlights approached, washing over me just before the vehicle swerved out the way. "Get out of the road, asshole!" The driver yelled out the window before blaring the horn and speeding away. In those few moments, her stalker had managed to disappear from sight. I scanned the darkened alley, moved forward cautiously, expecting them to leap out at me at any second. But there was no one there. And there was no one on the sidewalk either. For the first time that night, I felt genuine fear. I hustled back to the diner, this time checking for traffic first. As I approached the door, I found the booth sitting empty. A wad of crumpled bills sat on the edge of the table. Cursing, I searched the streets for any sign of her, to no avail. It had been an unsettling night, and by then I was completely baffled. What exactly had happened? I forced myself to slow down and assess things logically. I didn't really know what to think. I could almost have written it off as the antics of a very paranoid woman, except for the fact that there had definitely been someone in the alley, and it did appear that they had been following her. Then I realised I had never gotten her name. She hadn't asked mine, and I hadn't asked hers. This seemed odd to me, considering the bizarre interaction we had just shared. Was this some kind of elaborate con? Had she been working with someone else to distract me? My mind went back to how off guard I'd been when she'd embraced me, and I felt for my wallet. It was still there, and everything still inside it, so she hadn't robbed me. Still, the whole thing didn't sit right with me. I couldn't let it go. So I decided to wander the streets in the hopes that I'd catch sight of her again. I pulled my hood tight and headed back in the direction we had come from, still trying to piece the puzzle of this evening together as I trudged along. I hadn't been walking very long when I saw a group of friends smoking outside of a pub. "Hey, excuse me," I greeted them as I approached. "You didn't happen to see a friend of mine go by?" I'd been trying to think of the best way to describe her, but the group ignored my presence entirely and continued to joke amongst themselves. "Excuse me, sorry to bother you all," I tried again, "but I'm looking for someone who..." There was a murmured agreement that they should head back in, that it was too cold to stand out there any longer, and with that they filed back inside without so much as a glance in my direction. Everything about this evening had been off, but this was unbelievable. There was just no reason for an entire group of people to pretend I didn't exist. Or was there? It was the absence of a person. I froze, her words entering my brain suddenly. But that was preposterous, wasn't it? I peered at my reflection in the pub window, certain of my existence. But now I was overcome with the need to get someone to acknowledge me. I reached for the pub door. I could feel it in my hand, but it wouldn't budge. I pushed and pulled, but the door wouldn't open from either direction. I'd have thought it was locked if I hadn't just seen it swing open seconds before. It was then that I knew something was wrong. Whatever this world is, whatever plane of existence I had come from, I quickly realised that I was not a part of it anymore. No one could see me. No one could feel me. No one could hear me. And I could no longer interact with any physical objects that I hadn't already been carrying. As the early morning sun began to rise, I was still desperately trying to get anyone's attention. For all my efforts, I was awarded nothing, The most I was able to do was get trapped in my building stairwell after trying to follow a neighbour inside. To my dismay, I hadn't caught up with them before the door at the top of the stairs swung shut, and I was forced to wait there until another neighbour came down the stairs on their way to work. Being outside was better. Even if I could still feel the whipping wind, at least out there I couldn't get stuck anywhere. For the first few days I felt hunger and thirst, but the longer I stayed, the less I felt. Eventually I grew numb to these sensations. Even the stinging cold became bearable. Gradually, I came to accept my fate, however cruel, however impossible it all seemed. It had probably been weeks. By then I had lost all sense of time when I met another like me. I'd been sitting in a frozen park late at night, trying to remember what it was like to be real. I didn't react to the shadow that loomed in front of me, expecting it to belong to yet another person who couldn't see me. It was only when it halted that I bothered to look up. They were much like the silhouette I had seen on that fateful night, and my breath caught as I tried to find a face that wasn't there. Something darker than total blackness stared back at me, and I wondered if I appeared the same way to them. "Do you see me?" I tried asking it.
Yes.
I nearly choked, searching for words, trying to figure out what question to ask next. What happened to us?" The figure gave a dry laugh.
Seems we're dead, doesn't it?
It had crossed my mind a few times, but hearing something else say it was worse. Only then did it feel real. "But how?" I cried. The stranger snorted.
You mean you don't remember how you died?
"No, do you?"
Yeah, got lured here, just like you.
"What do you mean?" The figure gave a long sigh before sitting beside me on the bench.
Haven't been like this long, have you?
I shook my head.
Well, here's how it works. As you might have noticed, most people can't see you, and you can't do a thing to make them. But there are a couple of exceptions. They're just really rare to come across.
"What are the exceptions?"
Well, there are the gifted types,
it said, pointing a non-finger to the middle of where their forehead would have been.
and then there are the folks who are on their way here.
On their way here? Like, dead?
Precisely.
I processed this information for a while, trying to think back to the night I'd disappeared. She'd been able to see the dark figure, and so had I. I drew a sharp breath, the revelation slowly dawning on me. The car. It must have hit me when...
Not quite.
The stranger interjected.
You never actually died. Whoever took your place managed to switch places with you right before you would have. Right place, right time. Nearly impossible without the help of someone living.
So she tricked me, I scoffed, incredulous. Why? Why would she do that to me?
Who knows, eh? People do crazy things for all sorts of reasons, you know? Point is, don't bother dwelling on reasons here. They don't matter much. Good luck finding your way back. Not many of us ever do.
With that, the absence of a person strode away, leaving me to come to grips with what I'd been told. I knew I'd never find her again. Whoever she was, whatever she wanted, it didn't matter. She'd gotten what she needed, and she was long gone. It took some time, but I learned that I had to accept that. I learned that I had to let it go. It seemed the only way I'd ever make it back was to remain vigilant, to notice anyone who gave me the slightest glance. So I wandered, aimless, directionless. For how long, I can't say. Time doesn't really seem to matter as much here. You kind of forget about it after a while. All I can say is that one day my efforts paid off. One day I found my ticket back, after searching for so long. So I thank you, my friend, for the opportunity. I hope that you find your way back someday. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to support the channel, we have a link in the description. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, share, like, and press the bell to get notification when new videos are uploaded. You can send your real or fictional stories to the email address in the description.